It's tool time with lots of power. Actually, we got all our basic fly tying tools here. I'll show you some of the examples of fly tying tools that are common on the market. So when you go in there looking for that fly tying device at your local shop, you'll know what to get. The original vise, and probably one of the most common in the industry, is the Thompson A. Good, simple vise. Durable, you can get replacement jaws for it. In fact, this is Jack Dennis's original fly tying vise, this exact one here, which is 30+ years old. You can get these extra jaws for smaller flies or larger flies, or if you happen to wear out a jaw. It's fairly inexpensive. A very common and very popular vise in the market is the Regal. Real nice and simple. No hook adjustment. Press the cam, slip on the hook, and away you go. It comes in a fixed head model, or there's 360-degree model, which you can turn around for trimming your fly or inspecting your fly. A vise that's got a lot of market share in recent years is the Renzetti. It comes in a few different versions, but basically the attributes of Renzetti, it's a true rotary vise. Once you put your hook in there, when you turn the vise, the hook's always in plane. It's always in the same line. You get a basic model like this called the Traveler. This is a bobbin cradle for throwing your thread over, just in case you're wrapping materials with the vise. You get deluxe models like this with a heavier jaw and a cam adjustment on it, like the Master, one of the highest end vices on the market. Some simple vices are the Griffin vices. They're pretty good value for beginning fly tyer, especially this one here, the Model 1A. Real simple, turn the knob here, close it here, hold a wide range of hook sizes. And it says it's a very economical vise for beginning tyer. On the top of the Griffin line, you have the Patriot Cam. This is kind of a neat vise. It's a 360 vise. Has an adjustment here, but one quick close of the cam secures it real quickly and very, very securely. This one here is on a pedestal, and sometimes look at pedestal versus C-clamp vices. My general preference is to use a C-clamp like there's on the rest of the vices. It's just more secure. But if your tying area has a table that's too thick or you travel a lot, we don't always have a good tying area, a good heavy pedestal like this will work. This particular vise comes with a two-piece stem, which you can screw together. On these other vices here, if you use them in a pedestal, it's not a bad idea to get a shorter stem. It will make it a lot more steady platform. After our vices, the next most important thing is going to be a good pair of scissors. A good sharp pair of scissors will allow you to trim out hackle fibers. It's allow you to cut parts of your fly without cutting the whole thing. Most of the scissors on the market are what we call serrated. It's kind of like your saw. There's little grooves in here, and what they do is they keep your materials from sliding out, especially on slippery materials like nylons, some of the hair materials. So the more common brands, you have Dr. Slick, which is basically refurbished surgical tools, a little bit better surgical tools than some of the other companies on the market. This is a good general purpose, heavier scissor. Scissors have been around for years as a Thompson ICE, one of the original serrated fly tying scissors. One nice thing about this, especially for the tyer with large hands or small hands, these finger loops can be bent and adjusted to fit your fingers. So you can leave your scissors on your hand as you're tying, which makes for quicker tying. The Griffin serrated ice scissors are pretty much the same scissor. This one here is what's called an offset scissor, which I really like. I set my hand in here, and this is real easy to hold in my hand while tying. It's the same basic blade as this scissor here. There's some curved scissors, a pair of Griffin curved scissors. And where curved scissors can come in handy is trimming like muddler heads. We want a kind of curved head on it. Or if you're into tying bass bugs or patterns like that, where you want a little curvature to the hair. They're also nice for trimming out wings on some patterns. It's a pair of all-around Griffin scissors, real fine pointed, good general purpose scissor. This is one of the few that's not serrated. It's still very sharp and seems to work pretty well. Stylus Scissors has been pretty popular for years. Is this guy here. This one's distributed by Spirit River. It's an old knockout. It's a knockoff of the old Weiss Quick Clip, which was a sewing thread scissor. Easy to hold on your hand. So the most experienced commercial fly tyers in the world, they use this type of scissor and like it a lot. We have some squizzers, which are a little different scissors. They're real similar to some of the old iris scissors. This particular one here is probably one of the finest point scissors. It's really nice for small dry flies, and make a model with a little groove in it, which is great for cutting out stray hackle fibers. So here's some of our basic scissors. We need a bobbin for fly tying. What a bobbin does is hold your thread. Originally, in the early days, there wasn't bobbins, and basically you had to tie your thread off at each time, hold tension on it. The bobbin life's a lot simpler. The big players on the market in the bobbin world are Griffin, Matarelli, Renzetti. So you have bobbins that are some metal tube like this. You have some bobbins that are metal tube with a ceramic insert. I like the ones with a ceramic insert just because you can't wear them out. Probably the worst thread on the bobbins is really fine thread, like 8/0 or 6/0, since it tends to cut into bobbins a little bit quicker. The bobbins will come in different lanes. Generally, a little bit longer bobbin is easier to tie big flies with, maybe saltwater flies or streamer flies. The shorter bobbin is a little bit handier for working on small flies. We have some bobbin threaders and bobbin cleaner combinations. What we do is use this bobbin threader to thread the thread through our bobbin. Slip the end in. It's kind of like a needle thread. Slip in your thread, pull it out. A lot of your thread's going to be wax, and so eventually you get some wax clogged up in there. You slip this end in there, and you can push out the wax to clean it out. We have some whip finishers. There's 3 basic styles of whip finishers. We have the Matarelli style, the Thompson style, and the Griffin. Advantages to the Matarelli style is you can basically whip finish the front or back of the fly. The advantage of the Thompson style is it basically controls thread tension. And the Griffin kind of falls in between. You can whip finish in a variety of spots, but it does have a thread tension spring. We have a Bodkin, not to be confused with the bobbin, which is basically almost like a dissecting needle or a needle that we use for putting head cement on a fly or for picking out stray fibers, for roughing up a nymph. Have some half hitch tools. When you first start tying, probably the easiest way to finish off a fly is to do a half hitch. As you get more adept at it, you'll use the whip finisher there. But this is a little simpler way, and it's basically a tube with a hollow end in it, which you can wrap a half hitch on and slide it down on the hook. And it comes with different size holes for different size hook eyes. I'll sometimes also use this as pushback deer hair on muddlers or hopper heads. Since we use a lot of hackle on our flies, we need some hackle pliers. There's a few different basic styles. There's the English style, which has been around for a lot of years. You have the teardrop style, and we have some of the newer rotating styles. All of these work pretty well. Once you find a good one, hang on to it. They can vary from model to model. So if you find one that grips your hackle well, stick with it. I kind of prefer the rotating style myself. I think it's a little bit easier to use. I talked about your bodkin, but other things I'll use to put on cement or glues on flies: straight pins, toothpicks, or a Q-tip, which are disposable if you're using really sticky glue and you don't want to lie around on your bench. Kind of handy little items. For working with hair, we're going to need some hair stackers. Here's a full range of them. I have a really small one here that opens up. They use it for calf tail. Some of the finer deer hair, like on comparidons and small flies. I have some medium-sized hair stackers, kind of general purpose. This one here is adjustable, so you can adjust it for length of the hair you're going to use in it. And we've got the King Kong model, which I use for stacking a lot of hair. You know, your big sofa pillows or stacking a bunch of hair for tails. Later on in the video, we'll show you how to use those. Also, for working with hair, I got a hair packer, which I use to push back the hair on my muddler heads to make them tighter. And a bullet head tool. tying your Matamexes and patterns like that, it'll help hold the hair in place while you wrap your thread down. When you get fancy and start getting into your Spring Creek patterns, sometimes you want some real exact mayfly wings. There's two ways to do that. We've got wing cutters, which will work like a little cookie cutter. You set the feather on a little rubber eraser and push down, and you'll see how to do that later in the video. And we've got wing burners, where you set the feather in here, take a lighter, and burn off the excess. You got a nice little mayfly wing shape. Or you can get it for stonefly or caddis wings also. You'll see dubbing later on in the video. And sometimes for making coarse bodies, a little dubbing tool is kind of handy. This particular model is called a dubbin. I think it's probably one of the easiest ones to use. Some other tools I do find handy. This little toothbrush I use for cleaning out the underfur on some of my deer hair and elk hair to make it easier to work with. Some glue bottles for putting head cement in. And just a basic inexpensive plastic glue bottle for putting drops of head cement in. This little razor box cutter knife, sometimes used for cutting materials. If you want to get fancy on your hair stuff, razor blades are kind of handy, though you have to be very careful with them. We talked about scissors earlier, and once you have a good pair of scissors, you don't want to ruin them. They can be fairly expensive, and they should last you for a long time. Sometimes we use copper wire, brass wire, gold wire for tying our flies. What we'll want is something to cut that wire with. Some electrical cutters like this work well. A couple of different types of toenail clippers work very efficiently. And one of my favorite tools for an all-around kind of plier cutter is these little electrical pliers. I can use them for crimping down barbs. I can crimp down lead wire. I can cut wire with it. Nice little fine tip plier. And I got a little specialty tool here. You'll see later on we're going to tie some flies, or actually I'm going to show you some flies that actually put eyes on, especially on deer hair heads. We want to cut out eyeball sockets. And this is basically a toenail clipper. I took a dremel tool and cut out so I can actually make a little eyeball socket if I want. Once you start accumulating hooks, a hooks box is a real handy thing. You put a bunch of hooks in there. These are curved so you can scoop them out. You can keep your hooks organized. You can label on top what they are. And actually you can put other materials in with your hooks that you're not using right then. Say, for example, a hackle, which I'll mention later on, so you don't lose that hackle for that size fly. One other suggestion I might make, if you're really going to get into fly tying and have a fly tying room, which makes life a lot simpler, is to get some pegboard and put it up either on your bench or on the wall, since most things that come for fly tying are set up on Ziploc bags meant for pegboard. That makes a nice, neat, organized area. I've talked about a lot of tools, and there's a lot of dollars in tools here. But what do you really need? Basically, we need a vise. Your budget would probably determine what vise you get. What I'd say overall is get the best tools you can buy without crimping your material budget. This little Griffin vise will hold hooks very solid, as solid as a lot of the more expensive vices, although it doesn't have a lot of the extra features. If you're starting out, maybe it's better to buy some more hackle and stuff like that and have a little less expensive but serviceable vise than it is to have the fanciest vise out there. Of course, you need a good pair of scissors. Invest in one pair of kind of all-around scissors, kind of a medium width scissor. You don't need the super fine points, something you can use for hair, but that you can also use for clipping fine parts on your flies. I suggest a ceramic bobbin. And I'll show you in a while how to adjust one of these bobbins for thread tension. Whatever type of whip finisher works for you. And what the type of whip finisher you might get is the one that your best friend uses, because he can show you how to use it the best. He'll be the most experienced with it. Or if you take a class, it might not be a bad idea to get the whip finisher that your teacher uses, because you'll learn how to use that the best. A bodkin for putting glue on your flies and picking out the flies. I say a basic kind of all-around hair stacker is nice. A whip finisher. That realistically gets you by, although I forgot some type of clipper for your wire. Those tools will get you by. As you get more and more into it, of course, what wants and needs are always different. But